Yeah, so what I kind of want to go over was, so I have a few questions here.
Okay.
These are things that people have asked, and I'm just going to show them to you.
Okay.
Um, so have you heard of Shopify Markets Pro?
I've never used Shopify Markets Pro.
Okay.
Um, in terms of using it for international markets, are you meaning like sales?
Yeah, so they track all of your sales tax and then they remit your sales tax as well for you.
Okay.
I believe it's like 179 a month, or it's 6% of sales.
6% of total sales?
Yes, of
Ooh.
your international sales.
Oh, of just international sales?
Yes.
So wait, does Shopify Markets Pro only for the US customers or for US businesses?
I
Or is it for
believe so
international business?
because, yeah, I believe it is.
Well, I feel like EAS is only like 0.3% of every sale.
Oh,
For
really?
just international markets, the ones that go through international. I'm pretty sure, or it's like per transaction,
Okay.
something like that. I feel like EAS is a lot cheaper than that. 6% seems like a lot. But I mean,
Because that's what Shopify's taking.
EAS is only for for EU.
Uh-huh.
Uh, so international markets might be different in terms of like if you're selling a lot in Japan or China. But once again, what are they going to do? Are they going to come knock on your door? Are they going to come tell you to
Yeah.
stop? I mean, I feels like that's a lot of money. I would worry about the EU because the EU could probably shut you down,
Hmm.
really, but like it's not like Mexico is going to stop you or
Hmm. Yeah,
you know,
I
in
would
my
say
opinion.
it's US, UK, Canada, Australia, and Netherlands and New Zealand are
Yeah.
the only countries really advertising them.
Well, I feel like EAS would do all of those because those are all part of the European Union
Hmm.
trade system.
What
But
is
I
the
can ask them.
EAS?
I'll ask them. I'll look at the pricing and I'll let you know for sure. But I feel like EAS is a lot cheaper and they seem like they're on top of it.
Okay.
I like the owners. I've talked to them. I've had chats with them before.
What is EAS?
EAS is just another plugin that's a part of Shopify that you
Gotcha.
can
Okay.
download, and then it just reads your transactions.
Okay. Cool.
As for like, I mean, obviously TikTok is only domestic, so yeah,
Hmm.
Shopify is the only one that you'd worry about.
Okay. Um,
Look at it.
for helping to simplify sales tax for US and international, I feel like that kind of plays into the last question. Um,
I mean, for US, there's nothing to make it easier unless you hire somebody.
mhm,
I mean, my opinion is if you're making less than $60,000 a month on Shopify, I wouldn't even worry about sales tax.
okay.
That's
It's gonna help a lot of
my
people.
opinion on it, just because, I mean, what are they going to do? A slap on the wrist? I mean, you're talking about such a small portion too, because not even all states have a requirement for ebooks, which is
Hmm.
most people's sales. If you're doing physical copies, it
Should you
does get a
charge
little bit
sales
different.
tax?
You should charge sales tax on physical copies for the end user,
Hmm.
but only if you have a way of remitting it. So like you shouldn't just turn
Okay.
on sales tax for Shopify until you have somebody who's going to send it and
Hmm.
physically file the tax returns.
Okay.
Otherwise, you'll have to file back taxes if you want to do it correctly, or do what I tell everybody and just keep it. But yeah, hiring somebody would be smart. Like you could do TaxJar or Avalara, or you can do what I do, tell everybody to do is Zamp.
Hmm.
Um, but like I said, I wouldn't even worry about looking at hiring somebody or talking to somebody until your sales are over $60,000 a month, unless you are, let's say you are a Kelsey Ray and you are selling a lot of physical copies.
Uh-huh.
Um, it might be different, but once again, your odds of getting caught are super, super tiny because I
Hmm.
mean, how are they going to know? There's
Hmm.
nobody reporting this information. It's self-reported. And the only reason why I think $60,000 a month in sales is because spread out over 50 states, that could be $1,000 a month. And
Hmm.
even if 5% of that's taxable, I mean, you're talking like $2 or $3 maybe.
Hmm.
So it's it's such a small minuscule amount, even if you owed $5 each month to each state for the whole
Hmm.
entire, you're talking like $60
Yeah.
per year. I mean, it's not worth paying $500 a month to file those tax returns
Okay.
when you're going to be paying such a small amount. And if you get caught, they're going to tell you you owe all these back taxes, but what's penalties on $60? Maybe, $4.
Hmm.
It's worth it to every person to wait until they reach some type of threshold that they decide to be compliant, because there's no reason to, because the cost greatly outweighs the benefit
Okay.
of being compliant.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. And then for like an overview of what we should do with countries just to advertise to, and that kind of plays into what you just talked about, I would say.
So when you're talking about suggesting that you advertise to different countries, are you talking about like, I think I think it kind of depends on what you've done to
Hmm.
prepare. Like let's say you've done translations. You should advertise to that country that you've done translations for, where that's the major language being spoken.
Yeah.
If you haven't done translations, then just pay attention to your Amazon markets. You
Hmm.
can pull that from KDP and see which countries you are selling to, and then really push there. Because I mean, if you're already selling organically, pushing advertising only is going to increase that. But if you notice that it
Yeah.
does increase after you sell advertising to it,
Hmm.
then why would you continue? You
Yeah.
know, so I mean, that's how I would suggest going about advertising to different countries.
Okay. Yeah.
There's not really nothing tax wise that I can tell you. The only time that you should worry about taxes is if you are physically in that country in some way.
Okay. That makes sense.
So let's say um, you decide that let's say I'm in New York
Hmm.
and I'm selling books, and physical copies are really expensive to store there because land is expensive. Let's
Hmm.
say I live in New York City or whatever. So I want my distribution facility to be in Indiana. Or let's say I'm crazy enough and I want to have it in Canada, something like
Hmm.
that. I've now made my business exist in that country.
Yeah.
Or let's say I have an employee that lives in Indiana and I'm paying that employee and I
Yeah. They're
have
gonna know.
inventory. It makes it more likely for that state or that country to know that you exist. And that would be
Hmm.
the only time that I would worry about like my expenses causing me to have to add another tax return,
Yeah.
worry about being compliant. So even if I have sales in a state, that does not mean that I should file a state tax return.
Okay.
It's whenever I start adding employees in that state or adding a warehouse or holding my inventory, or even paying somebody to do my taxes or my books,
Hmm.
or even if I go there for a conference for 2 weeks. Um, Technically, if you are doing any business and you are present in that country or in that state, you should uh, allocate some of your earnings to that locality. Does that
Hmm.
make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So whenever it comes to advertising, there's no changes in taxes. And I would just, if I was going to decide how to advertise to different countries, I would look at my sales currently and make decisions based on that.
Okay. Okay.
That's all I talk about advertising. I hope I answered that question.
Yeah. No, that totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, for the other ones, was there anything that like you would generally go over in terms of like I would say with that other example of the 60,000 per month, um, that would you say that generally works for anyone? Like unless you're there and then you're selling a lot of paperbacks, then you don't really have to worry about it.
Yeah. So I would generally say that works for, yes, in the US markets. In the EU, you have VAT tax, which is value
Hmm.
added tax. Um, Obviously those are pretty simple to look up. You
Hmm.
can just say, what's my VAT tax threshold for the UK, or what's the VAT tax threshold for um, Slovakia?
Yeah.
You can look those up and kind of determine that yourself. But nobody has that kind of time to look at that each month.
Yeah.
So that's why I always suggest doing the plugin. Um,
And that was the EAS one?
the EAS plugin, yeah,
Okay,
it seems cheaper to me. Like I said, I'll look at it a little bit more and then I'll let you know.
cool.
And I'll maybe I can talk to Shopify Markets Pro just like I talked to EAS, and see if they have anybody who can tell me a little bit more about it and
Okay.
why they're charged that much. And then, but yeah, for US markets, just looking at the US on Shopify, if you reach a threshold of about $60,000 a month in sales,
Hmm.
regardless of how much profit you're making, you could be spending $70,000 in advertising. Um, but I mean, obviously, you wouldn't continue to do that for very long.
Yeah.
But maybe, I don't know, maybe you're making enough on the other retailers organically based on the fact that you're selling so much on Shopify.
Hmm.
But at that point, I would start looking at doing sales tax,
Okay.
for the states, even if you're in international markets.
Okay.
And as I said earlier, if you have an international client, or you are a business or an author that's international,
Hmm.
uh, not worrying about filing any state or US income tax until they have physical presence, such as inventory, traveling there,
Hmm.
and they need to talk to their CPA, because I don't do international taxes. But
Okay.
that's how the US determines whether or not something is taxable. And that's how states determine it's taxable, is if your earnings were earned because you worked in that state or your business was located in that state.
Okay. That makes sense. And in terms of Shopify telling us when we're meeting the country's nexus, um, is that something you recommend Shopify to take care of, or should we should you watch after that yourself?
Well, they're going to tell you the second that you've reached Nexus.
Okay.
Um, if it were me, I would just ignore it until you reach that other threshold I talked to you about.
Okay.
That's my opinion, because
Hmm.
they're going to tell you the second that you owe a penny.
Hmm.
Uh, and it's not, once again, it's not worth, because you may have reached it this pretty early in the year, and you should, but once again, what are they going to do? States don't talk.
Hmm.
So like, no one's going to know that you've met it in Arkansas. Shopify's not going to tell them, unless, and then until they subpoena their records. I don't know, but I
Yeah.
don't know how they would do that either. So at this point, no one's talking, and it's not worth it to you to pay $500, or even, whatever you'd be paying on tax jar
Hmm.
per month to file those. Uh, Sorry, I feel
Okay.
like I'm a broken record,
No, that makes
but
sense. Yeah, yeah. And I mean, yeah, repetition's good too. Going back through it.
it's just always comes back to that idea of like
Yeah.
materiality. Is it
Yes.
material? Is
Yeah.
it, even if they do find me, they're not going to stop me. They can't.
Hmm.
It's not like they can't call the internet and be like, hey, don't let this person. But I mean, they might slap a lien on you. But once again, they can't. If you
What would
live in a
that mean?
state, what are they going to do? They're not going to come knock on your door. That's not worth it to them.
Hmm.
Even if you owed $500, which would be crazy to owe $500 to one state, you'd have to really be pushing in that state,
Okay.
unless you're making a lot of money. Because I mean,
Around that 60,000 range
yeah, around that
per
sixty
month.
thousand dollar a month range, you'd have
Hmm.
to, and it'd have to be a large portion of your sales. Like
Hmm.
maybe California,
Yeah.
California has high sales tax rates, but you'd be hard pressed to find a state that you would owe $500 to at the end of the year, especially since you're doing ebook copies.
Okay.
And right now, most states do not tax virtual goods.
Okay. So just
They
keeping an eye
physical
on the
goods.
paperback goods
Yeah,
then and
keeping an
just
eye on
seeing.
yeah, because paperback goods are taxable right away
Okay.
and are taxable.
So that's what
Uh,
you do want to pull taxes on, and
and see
that's where you can look at EAS and
if
manage that.
EAS is for international.
That's for international. Okay. So tax
Sa-
jar, things like
Sales,
tax
yeah,
jar,
sales tax for the state is ZAMP or
ZAMP. Okay.
tax jar or Avalara. There's a lot of plugins that you can do. I think there's one that starts with an S. I can't remember what it's called. Sonos. I'm not sure, but
Okay.
um, it's that's for international taxes. I mean, VAT tax is so high. I mean, we're talking, I think the UK is like 60,000. I mean, how many people are selling physical goods of $60,000 or more over the year to
Yeah,
somebody in
maybe
the
only a
UK?
handful.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
And if you're doing that, you've got a good CPA. I would hope in that country
Hmm.
that would tell you, hey, you might want to think about VAT tax.
Hmm.
Uh, if not, then they need to get one.
Yeah. Yeah, at
So
that point you should be able to.
I shouldn't be the one telling you, but
Okay, cool. So that makes sense. So in terms of collecting state or tax in your own state, what
mhm.
would you recommend there? Since my account does not know.
So the where you are physically located, like you and your business, you are
Hmm.
already meeting what we call nexus, which
Okay.
means you're physically located there. Therefore, any of your sales in that state are taxable.
Okay.
But once again, you're talking about an e-commerce business who, if they're making less than $60,000, how much are they really selling in their state? So it depends on the end user. So let's say I live in Colorado
Hmm.
and 5% of my sales are in Colorado.
Hmm.
The rest of it are somewhere else. 5% of my sales are taxable in Colorado. And
Hmm.
that's only if Colorado um, taxes ebooks too, which they
Hmm.
don't.
Okay.
It'd be only physical goods.
So
And
look in
my
your
how
own
much am I
state first.
spending to Colorado? So it's the same answer.
Okay.
So for sales tax in the state that you live, yes, you are technically already meeting Nexus, but
Hmm.
it's immaterial once again, because
Okay.
how much are you really selling in your state? Now,
Gotcha.
all of your income that you make is taxable in that state on their state income tax, but it's not sales tax and income tax are two different taxes.
Okay. So it's just that's where that nexus comes to where if you make enough in another state, then you're essentially a part of that state in terms of their sales tax.
Yes, you
Okay.
become a part, your business has reached a threshold that
Hmm.
they have said, you have done enough business here. You have used our population to your business so much that
Hmm.
you are located in our thing and you are required to pay sales tax.
Okay. And so looking in your own state first, because if they do tax ebooks and audiobooks, you just see what products they tax. And
Yeah.
then you can decide from there, maybe they don't tax ebooks, you don't even have to worry about it.
Yeah. And if they
And
do
then
tax virtual goods,
mhm,
call your state and ask them, because even though it says that they're going to tell you, they're going to say in law,
mhm,
I mean, just, always ask, maybe even go ask a few different CPAs in your state what they think if they've ran into this.
mhm.
Most likely they won't. Then probably the next thing to do would be call like TaxJar,
Okay.
Sam, or Avalar and ask them because they'll know. They're required to know because they're the ones that are filing on behalf of everybody.
Okay.
Just don't read the law and assume. It's
Mhm,
never clear, and it won't say. So even if it says, we tax virtual goods, they may be talking about virtual goods that were drop shipped,
mhm,
or because it says, oh, or any good that's underneath this other code section.
mhm.
And you don't read that code section, you just take it, and then you start paying taxes that you don't need to pay. You should just never assume that you've read the law correctly. You should always talk to somebody who has knowledge about it and
Yeah.
how to read,
Yeah, definitely.
because it's not what authors are there for. They're there to write. You guys don't
Mhm.
know. I mean, tax code is impossible.
It's crazy. It's crazy. I don't know anything about tax yet. So so once you have your own state, you figure that out, and then obviously with you said around that $60,000 a month range is when you'd start. That's when you can start worrying about things. Same thing
Yeah.
for VAT too, hitting that 60,000 for physical goods,
I mean, yeah, but only for international sales.
only
It's
for international, yeah.
international sales. I
And
mean,
then
yeah.
tax jar, you said it would be a main one too. Tax jar and then EAS for international.
Yeah. Tax jar it's fine.
You said the
So
other one was Zoom.
the problem with tax jar and Avalar is that it's not fixed.
Okay.
So If you feel like your growth is going to be quick, or you
Hmm.
think that you're just going to stay at the $60,000 mark, I would suggest just going with like Taxstar. But if you feel like you're going to continue to increase your sales because you're scaling up your
This is
advertising,
past 60,000 a month.
yeah, past $60,000 a month. If you are thinking about scaling, I would go with somebody who's more fixed, like
Hmm.
Zamp.
Okay.
Um, just because Taxstar, it's kind of hard to explain, but like Taxstar and Avalara, they charge you per return. So let's say you've met Nexus in 7 states, but they're all quarterly returns. So they would file you 28 returns per year at $100 a piece. That'd be $2,800, which is
Hmm.
pretty cheap.
Hmm.
But let's say one of your states decides you have more than, I think it's $200 a month or something like that in sales.
Hmm.
They might move you to a monthly tax return. Therefore, that one would go from being $400 a month to, or $400 a year to $1,200 a year.
Hmm.
And it starts to increase every time you move to monthly for those states, or you add more states.
Hmm.
Whereas Zamp says, well, for the first 3 to 7 states, we'll charge you $450 a month. And regardless of whether it goes monthly or not, we're still going to charge you the same.
Hmm.
If you want to go from 5 to 13 states, then it's, I don't know, 550 a month. But it stays consistent,
Hmm.
which for me in the past and working with all my authors and course creators and all my other, e-commerce people who have sold, they'd prefer to have something that's more consistent.
Okay.
Uh, so unless you think your sales are going to be consistent and you're going to consistently sell in the same states,
Hmm.
I would shy away from Avalar and Taxstar because that's what they do. They charge per return, and you'll just get a surprise bill.
Okay.
It's, it may be higher, it may be more.
Yeah, it's really good to know.
Yeah, because sales tax doesn't change, right? Like it doesn't
Hmm.
matter. You ask for that money up front, that money goes out. So you don't miss that money. It's it's the money that you're going to miss for the subscription.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, cool. Yeah, I can't think of anything else. I don't know if you can. We
Nope,
covered a
I think
lot.
yeah, no, I think it's difficult because everybody's situation is different, but
Hmm.
I just always go back to materiality as a CPA. Like the government doesn't want you to file 50 different income tax returns, and they don't want you to file 50 different sales tax returns per month. Um, that's why they have these rules.
Hmm.
So if you think that something is too hard, or you think, "Oh, this is stupid. I just filed a $2 sales tax return to Missouri.
Hmm.
Why am I doing that?" Well, then don't.
Yeah.
You know, um, if it's costing you more to be compliant, then it's worth it to the government to come and find you. Why would you do it? There's a cost benefit on both sides, and they understand that,
Hmm.
and that's why they're here, and that's why they set these rules. So you just keep it simple. I know taxes are scary and being compliant and worrying about someone coming knocking on your door. It's just not going to happen.
Hmm.
And if it does, there's a cease and desist letter, and you apologize and you say, I'm sorry, and they usually forgive it if
Hmm.
that even happens. I've never seen that happen. There are millions of e-commerce businesses who are making way more than you. They're not worrying about your small time authors. It's whenever you start making that $60,000 a month mark is when you should probably start worrying about it because you are becoming a big time e-commerce business.
Yeah, that
They
makes
want
sense.
they want you to grow. So that's why they write it in law. Yeah, I don't have anything else if you don't.
Oh, no, I don't either. I really appreciate it. This is
Mhm.
great. Really,
Yeah.
really appreciate it. I really appreciate your help. And then if you do want to talk to Ty as well, just in terms of consulting with business, I'm gonna go ahead and leave his email down below and definitely reach out to him and really help with individual specific things. What were some of the specific things? You said
Like sales
consulting
tax,
with.
international tax, consulting on overall costs of what
Hmm.
it should to do for your accounting side, because I mean we're authors, not accountants, right? So you should hire somebody. You should do what you do best and hire out the rest, is what I always say.
Yep.
And it's best to ask somebody instead of not knowing, because there's
Totally.
always other options. And I always hear other CPAs talk about other options, and I go, I never thought about that.
Mhm.
I'm not going to pretend to know that I know everything, but I do know a lot about what I've been doing for a really long time. And I've been doing this since 2016.
There you
So
go.
I hope that you can just feel comfortable enough to ask. And yeah, I think that's what I would really focus on, is just, overall taxes, bookkeeping, and at what thresholds you should be doing things.
Yeah. Yeah, you really simplified it.
Yeah,
Definitely. I really appreciate that. Well,
it's
cool.
not scary. It's easy.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Cameron, for your time,
Yeah.
and thank you, everybody
Thank
else.
you. Appreciate it.
Bye.
Cool. Take care.